Today we're going to be looking at the Orfeo, an ultra compact from Cybex, released around the same time as the Koya that we recently looked at, and which we decided to check out based on the hope that it might also embody a new sort of design, as the Koya did, but at a cheaper price point. So let's have a look then, going over the Orfeo from top to bottom, and examining its advantages and disadvantages in terms of child comfort, ease of use, performance and mechanics, before ending with a discussion of whether we feel it's worth its price. And starting off with some stats, the Orfeo clocks in at 6.3 kilos and folds down to 16 by 47.5 by 53 centimeters. It can take 22 kilos in the seat and 5 kilos in the underslung shopping basket. When it comes to child comfort, the Orfeo seat has an inside width of 33 centimeters, a total length for the sitting surface, meaning the backboard, baseboard, and leg rest, of 81 centimeters, and a total longer length of 109 centimeters, when including space beneath the canopy and the distance to the front frame mounted footrest, all of which are relatively decent dimensions versus the wider market, and make the model both capable of providing a comfortable reclined position for children under a year or so, and also of seating an older child up until around 3.5 or 4. The Orfeo has a deep, near-flat recline and a surprisingly acceptable upright position. Surprising because it shares a similar setup to the higher-priced Koya, whose upright position was definitely a bit too sloped. As far as other aspects of the seat go, there are unfortunately a few features that I do dislike. First being that, in my opinion, the textiles and harness feel almost deliberately cheap. Secondly, that the canopy is not extendable and is a bit too short, and is also fitted on relatively weak hinges, which could mean that the model may have trouble with the canopy staying open in the long run. And lastly, I've never been a fan of these weak, plastic, dual struts for adjusting the leg rest, which are a system brought over from umbrella models, and in addition to only fitting smaller leg rests, too small to be of much use past that year or so, the textiles often wind up sagging in the middle. Moving on to parent comfort, the Orfeo's handle is fixed at 100 centimeters high, which will be acceptable to most parents, but is a little on the short side versus the wider market. The shopping basket is both smaller than usual and pretty difficult to access, blocked off by sidewalls and impeded from the back by crossbars. As far as folding is concerned, the Orfeo feels a bit stiff right out of the box in my opinion, but past experience with this sort of folding system leads me to believe that this won't stay this way, and overall, folding is actually quite easy, being essentially one step, accomplishable with one hand, and producing a folded package that is self-standing, small enough to fit within the IATA's guidelines for cabin luggage, and even has a reasonably comfortable shoulder strap for carrying. And the only real peeve that I have with folding the model then is a somewhat tedious need to Velcro up the back of the seat. As far as how the Orfeo feels to use, the chassis is pleasantly tight in its connection points right out of the box, making it quite nice in comparison to most other Cybex Ultra Compacts, though I would note that this rigidity, combined with a lack of rear frame suspension, relatively small wheels, and hard plastic-like tires, means that the model more or less entirely lacks any form of shock absorption, and is pretty jerky and jittery over even stuff like broken sidewalks, relegating the model as really only useful then for travel or smoother shopping or amusement park-like destinations. Alright, let's move on and look at the mechanics of the Orfeo then, with the model having essentially the system that Cybex has used for many years on its Easy S line, involving a pair of wires that run a relatively short distance from the center of the handle to these relatively high-positioned locking points that, when released, allow the model to fold down via a variety of hinged points across the chassis. And while on many past versions of this mechanism, it's always felt a bit too loose and weak to me, on the Orfeo, there have been a few smaller changes, such as heftier round metal locking pins, that make the system feel a bit sturdier and tighter now. There are still weak points, mind you. I do see the potential for loosening, for example, in those locking mechanisms, in particular where the handle sockets in. But overall, the folding setup on the Orfeo is better than with similar models in the past. Beyond this, the Orfeo has decent cross support, even including a welded rear crossbar, and the only structural area that I'm a little iffy about is the use of these corrugated plastic struts for the middle section of the chassis, where, despite weight here being partly relieved by the support struts, these plastic sections strain a bit with steering, at least with a heavier child, which may lead to looser hinges and rivets elsewhere on the chassis. Moving down to the rear frame, there's again no inbuilt suspension. The brake system is a bit different than what I'm generally used to seeing on Cybex models, is placed a little awkwardly in my opinion, and is more weakly built than their common rotation-based system, being wire-based and using somewhat flat plastic brake pins that I suspect might be a cause of problems down the line. The rear wheels lock firmly enough within the rear frame, and the rims themselves are sufficiently sturdy in construction, but again, I'm not a huge fan of the tires that are quite smooth and plastic-like and won't provide much traction. Looking lastly at the front end, there's a little suspension built in the standard manner into the forks. It's not going to do much given the design of the rest of the model, but I guess it's nice anyway. And there are no swivel locks, which is okay, since as I said, you shouldn't be trying to use the model over rough terrain anyway. As with a lot of Cybex strollers, the forks sit a bit too loose in the front wheel housings, which in my experience in the workshop can be the main cause of potential wobbling problems down the road. So, should you get the Orfeo then? No, not at the price it's currently sold for anyway, in my opinion. It's not all bad, and the truth is that a lot of the negatives could have been forgiven at a significantly lower price point, since it does have a decently sized seat, doesn't feel too loose right out of the box, and folds down to cabin luggage size, and has a shoulder strap. But at around $400, it simply can't compete with a lot of other models out there on the current market that offer more durability and a more premium experience. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, we ask that you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. In addition, if you're currently shopping for a stroller, we have a buyer's guide on our Patreon page which lists a wide range of models that we recommend, with a lot of technical and lifestyle related information. You can find it by following the links in the description. Thank you.